You can see who's here with us. Any changes to the agenda for this morning's meeting? Not seeing any. Do I see a motion to support? Motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to support.
Thank you, Janet. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Morgan. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor indicate by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you.
Aye.
The minutes were not approved last time, so we have minutes from the November 23rd meeting as well as the November 29th meeting to approve. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Janet. Seconds? Second?
I'll second it. Greg.
Thank you, Kamal. Discussion? Seeing none. Welcome, Juan. Any discussion of the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor indicate by raising your hand or saying aye.
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 You. All right, Tina, do we have any written public comments this morning?
I did not receive any written public comment. We have one individual out calling in. If you would like to speak, please press *3 on your phone. I do not see any hands raised.
Great, thank you, Tina. All right, Paul, you're up.
All right. Good morning. Happy December 1st.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you received my emails,
Mm-hmm.
several yesterday. You should have received maps for some additional alternatives that we talked about, and also some additions to the web map. My thought is to start kind of review those. That sounded like a good course of action.
Mm-hmm.
All right. See that I can share my screen. I will do that. All right. Everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Maps. All right. So I think I'll be bouncing around a little bit between the map and the spreadsheet. Let's go through the maps real quick, and then I'll go to the spreadsheets rather than bouncing back and forth. Certainly, if there's a question, let me know. So first up, this what we're seeing is the initial 5. And I tried to explain my naming convention on the alternatives. Basically, if all these alternatives were kind of alterations of existing alternatives. So I tried to keep the initial letter. For example, this one that Juan and Kamal put forward is just named A2 because it really started with alternative A. And let me turn some things off. So this alternative A2 was really just adding precinct 612, really moving it from one district to another. And it's this small area. Kamal, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Otherwise, it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
All their boundaries are the same. All right. Then variations of alternative B. Here's the start of B. And initially, Morgan, I think you asked me to change 2 precincts. That ended up in creating alternative B2. So it's really just these 2 precincts switched. Morgan, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Later on, Morgan sent me a list, or sent us all a list of changes, and turn some things off. All right. Another alternative of alternative B. about a dozen precinct changes that you see in the dark gray. Let's see if I have everything turned off. Yes. Morgan, I assume that looks familiar?
I mean, again, as I said in the email, I didn't get to see a map of it. I was just looking at the spreadsheet. So
yeah,
sure,
yeah,
it looks close.
Yeah, and then I was looking at it, and I really wasn't sure if you had intended to start from the baseline of alternative B, or if you intended to start from your B2, which is this little zigzag there. So I made both.
Starting from B2.
Yeah. Okay. So and I wondered about that. That's why I have not sent out a map of alternative B3, because I wondered about that. So let's jump to B4, which, as I mentioned, I didn't reference it. It's a combination of B2 and B3. So you see it has the little zigzag there in the Orchards area, along with the other precincts that are in the list. So this is Morgan's input with precincts changed around several areas. Any comments or
Paul, can
questions?
you zoom in on that? That would be the northwest corner of 4, right to the east where the word battlegrounds printed. That's a funny looking little.
This guy?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's always been there. That's just following the city boundary.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I believe. That's a good question. Let me look at the initial 5. Yeah, the initial 5 had that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, that certainly does stick out, and it's just, that's kind of a crazy little. I think that's based on the city boundary. All right. So let's go to the spreadsheets. Yeah, another request from last time was to kind of put the spreadsheets together so we could kind of compare them side by side. Oh, let's see. Yeah, before we go here, I also want to follow up on an email I sent yesterday discussing the population error in the census data. We've talked about this before. It's got a couple of different names. Basically, it's disclosure avoidance is one of the names it uses. Differential privacy is another phrase you can Google and find out about it. But they diplomatically call it noise. They inject noise into the census data to protect the household privacy or privacy of individuals, really. So this is something I've shared before. I shared a screenshot in the email yesterday of 28 people shown to be on a traffic roundabout. Here, this is Fort Vancouver High School with 17 people. There's a park with 13 people. This is just, I think, a result of that, a pretty easily found result of that injected error into the data. What I can't see are what the error might be of areas that are clearly populated. How much variation there is there. Again, from the word from the Census Bureau is that at the state level, there was no error injected. Then as you drill down into counties, tracts, blocks, there's more and more error. Of course, as you back up, and we talked about aggregating blocks, you remove some of that error. The point there is that as we look at trying to get the lowest difference in population between councillor districts, there comes a point where there may be synonymous with a rounding error, or it's just really I can't tell you where that point is in terms of numbers or what, but there certainly comes a point where it's really diminishing returns on the in terms of trying to get the population lower and lower, or really the difference in population lower. I have asked the Census Bureau, and never really got a reply on that, on what the variation or whatnot is. That is. And the second point I made in that email is something we've talked about before with the RCWs, about compactness. This is a cleaned up version of the RCW for redistricting. I've shared it before. Every district shall be as compact as possible, along with population nearly equal as possible. So actually, and with that, that's a pretty good segue to the spreadsheets showing population and the compaction scores. Because
so Paul,
go ahead.
Is it I think reasonable to the information about the just to use the noise or the error rate or the confidentiality that the Census Bureau puts in there. So I think that results in, when you're talking about a population of 100,000,
right,
the geographic area, the population of 100,000, then you start talking about 50 people or 200 people, you're really talking about a margin of error in those kind of variations. Is that a fair way to think about that?
Yeah, that's actually what comes to mind is when you see polling, and there's a margin error of they'll state that there's a margin of error of plus or minus 5% or something like that. Exactly. That's a good analogy. I don't know what that margin of error is here. I think that
because they won't tell you, right?
Right. Well, and I kind of think that's part of the it's part of the privacy protection.
Yeah.
Is because as I've mentioned in the past, the reason that they've always in the past 10-year censuses, they have mixed up some of the numbers. They've moved people from they've moved a certain number of people from one block to another, kind of mixed it up, kind of like mixing around what's that, shell game, and whatnot. But here, I think with this differential privacy, they're doing more. They're more aggressive in injecting error, and it could be that sharing how much error is in the data may give up part of the secret.
Yeah. But as I look at the 4 plans that I've been looking at prior to the ones that you created with Morgan's input, but alternative A, A2, B, B2. I mean, the biggest deviation from target is like about 600, and that certainly seems that's within the margin of error. Without defining what that margin of error is, it's a very small, unknown deviation from perfect.
Right. It's as I said, it's kind of diminishing returns.
Yeah, thank you.
So on the spreadsheet on the top here, I've got the population by alternative, and these the deviations that Greg was mentioning. I mean, well, we see the individual deviations on the districts, and then kind of a total score of deviation. This is something that I appreciate Morgan sharing this, where you just add up the numbers, but you ignore, you convert the negative numbers to positive, and just come up with kind of the total number of deviations. But what I wanted to point out here is as we kind of moved to the right here, trying to, here's our initial 2 alternatives, or at least, well, there was also an alternative C, but we seem to be zeroing in on A and B. As we work to get the deviation smaller, the compactness suffers or is sacrificed. And this is, so here I've tried to, I mean, the compactness scores are, in this set of numbers here and then translated into this chart. Let me get this, and we're using 2 tests here. And they're generally the same results. We'll just look at alternative A and B. Let's start with those first. With this test, higher number is more compact. In this test, looking at A and B, B is more compact. If we start going into alternative 2, which brought the deviation down significantly in population, but the compactness went down even further, according to this test. B2, brought the compactness down from its parent from alternative B to 593. But as you see, the compactness, again, higher number, the more compact, the compactness score came down. And with the further iterations on alternative B, B3 and B4, we got it down to 395, but the compactness score, suffered or came down even further here.
Paul, I like the way you laid these alternatives out on that spreadsheet on top. I wonder if the committee would find it helpful to have one of those compactness scores laid out in that spreadsheet as well. Would that be of interest to people? Or are you getting enough sense of what Paul's talking about without having that all in side-by-side comparison?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting this is fine.
I think it's fine.
It's showing that they're inverse of each other. Every time we play with compactness, we affect the other, and when we play with population, we affect the other too. So.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Paul?
Yes.
So, I guess I don't maybe know, what is the scale of the Popper and the Groffman score? So, like, how much should we? We're looking at differences of 0.1 for the Polsby score or 0.01 between some of these, and then differences like 0.4 for the average score for the Groffman. So, like, is that a lot? Is that a small difference?
That's a good question.
It's not less, right? It's 0.05, I think. So we got 0.38 for, let's say, the A's, up to 0.43 on the B's, right? So that's only 0.05.
Right. On the Polsby Popper test produces a score that ranges from 0 to 1. So that's the range. And whereas the Groffman score is always above 1 and can go up, in the 20s, 30s, or something like that. So maybe to kind of get a sense for how much, it may be easier to look at the Polsby Popper scores or the scale. Note that the baseline here is not 0. It starts at 0.35. This is kind of the default on Excel, and it allows you to see the differences. If we reset this to, if we reset the y-axis here to 0, the differences wouldn't be as extreme. But here you can see that you can see the differences. Just keeping in mind that this is starting at 0.35.
So as Juan said, as the population deviation gets smaller, the compactness is worsened.
Yes.
that brings up a third point for me. So in thinking about this, and I think I mentioned this the last time, it's, I think that I have a third possibility to make a decision on. That for me seems to be the city of Vancouver, right? So looking at the population of Vancouver in the last census, it's 187,000, right? So, but it's split across 3 different districts. To me, it kind of doesn't make sense, right? So I'd like to keep Vancouver in the 2, even though we can't get all of it without mucking it, kind of leveling that off a little better.
So what does that, let's look at, let me switch to a map to understand what you're saying. Let's kind of go back to the original 2.
Right, so that southeast corner, right, that we're proposing to move over, that brings in a bunch of Vancouver.
Right. I'll point out that the northeast portion of Vancouver is still, so really Vancouver is still spread out 1, 2, 3. So
Right, but not at such a high level, right? So that to me would say that Vancouver, the District 1 is basically 100% Vancouver, and then there's another 87,000 that are in that. It's spread across the other 2, so if we can shrink that, and it seems like the north side of Vancouver there that we're not catching, that seems to be a little bit more rural than the bottom part there.
Go ahead, Janet.
All right. If you go back historically to how the city of Vancouver has been treated before whatever the state is now doing for redistricting, you still have the city of Vancouver like in 3 legislative districts. It was in the 49th, it was in the 17th, and a little bit of it was in the 18th. So that's how the state has treated the city. The other issue is the map that the charter committee used was based on something that the county has had in effect, I guess, from the freeholders that's over 8 years old. And the voters voted over 70% for these 5 districts that they voted on. And that includes, because of the demographics of Clark County, that includes a lot of Republicans who supported the 5 districts that were on as it was divided by the Charter Commission. And so I don't think you can take your personal preference of, well, let's just include more of the city of Vancouver, because when you look at the map and this funny S curve, one of the things it accomplishes is you're gerrymandering in Karen Bowerman. And so it makes it, you can't just use the city boundaries as the basis for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a personal issue. I don't care. But, when they did the 5 districts too, they didn't have enough data to not guarantee that there wasn't a minus 5,000 people in District 5, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to balance this whole thing out and get everything more squared away. No, not a personal thing. I mean, like we said, we muck with population, like in our case, and then we affect compactness, and then you guys want to do compactness, and that affects population. So there's got to be a third thing that we got to look at here.
Well, I'll mention
the
that
numbers on this alternative A2 and B2. I think you got the population within 105 of each other.
Yeah, and so are we. So we're even tighter still.
From Target.
Well, with the change that Paul made to ours, we're even tighter too, and we're still tighter than you guys. So. I mean, there's the 395 on B4, but okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you look at District 3 and District 5, what we're proposing basically comes out to a net 0. So, one is plus 170.90, the other was negative 160 something. We're within like 10. So,
but you're disregarding what the voters voted for. That's the problem.
Mm,
I understand that,
Right.
and
Really
yeah,
don't.
you're right. In the past, they've done certain things in a way, but now we got new numbers, and there's a reason why we're a redistricting committee, right? That we got to
Exactly.
figure out some things here.
The numbers are not even, Janet, and so at that. So this is our way of being able to equal out those population numbers.
What numbers are not even,
Well, the original map, Paul, the way it
Right.
was.
right?
Mhm.
I'll mention that, right, they did the best they could in May. The original, I'll put that up here. Let's see. Let's see. Well, there we go.
Well, while Paul's doing that, I'll pitch in. While I understand, appreciate, Juan, your observation about the city of Vancouver being split among these districts. For myself, I put more weight on the because it's there is the precedent of the city of Vancouver not being in the single, being consolidated into as few districts as possible. And just myself thinking about that, but also putting a lot of weight on that the voters just recently made this decision. And yeah, we have new population information that we are now required to take into account. But I'm strongly inclined to want to respect what the voters just approved. And to be as close as possible, well, again, that word, close as possible to what the voters just accepted.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. They voted on something, right? But the way I see it is they voted on something with some limited data. He introduced a huge disparity onto 5. Yeah, negative 5,000 there,
Mhm.
right? So we got to play with that.
Right.
Mhm.
And that means that if we're going to play with that, we got to play with everything else, and everything should
Yeah.
be on the table.
Well, I guess
Well,
that's where I guess that's the rub, right? When you say we have to play with that, but I don't agree that it means we have to play with everything else. There's you can
How else do we get negative 5,400 people filled in from other districts that are?
well, what I would say is when we asked Paul to create a plan, a map that was as close as possible to the voter approved plan, but to equal out the population, and he came back with that plan. That's respecting the voters' decisions, but also making the necessary adjustments for population. And so if you want to, I mean, again, it's not one of the criteria in state law, but I will say for myself, recognizing and valuing what the voters just decided, if you lay, one of them, I'd be interested, and I won't ask Paul to do this, but I'd ask, I think you can just visually look at it and say, which of these plans lines up closest with what the voters just approved? And I think it's pretty clear. Well, it is obvious. Plan B does that.
so one of the other things I asked at the end of last meeting about what would it do to get you guys to support perhaps the B plan. And you said you wanted to see the population equalized. So, or a better thing on the population. So my question to you is one of the alternatives which gets the population closer more acceptable to you?
That's
It's
Janet.
more
That's going to be
acceptable to
A2.
me, but it doesn't override. I think. Sorry, come on.
No, it's going to be A2. That's we took one of the precincts and moved it out of 5 into 3. That brought it closer. You see?
I mean, if that's your only criteria, B4 is the best plan.
Yeah.
So that should be the one you go with if that's the criteria that you're using.
Yeah, say that again, Morgan. If your most important criteria is getting the estimated population variance as small as possible, B4 does that. Is that your observation?
Yes, that is my observation.
Mentioned last time that still kind of skews, right? So it
Mm.
wasn't that I said, okay, that's total population deviation, right? But this is just between 3 and 5. districts 3 and 5, right? That deviation between those two, right? So, I mean, before, you know, it was.
Why does that
negative 6.
matter?
Because-
Because, I mean, in theory,
Like,
this should,
everything
these
be
will all add up to 0. The differences should add up to 0. You can't look at the individual districts and say, oh, well, they'll balance out, because if they don't balance out, then our numbers aren't going to add up to 503,000 people.
Totally understood. And I'm just saying I think that's my preference in Kamal's, right? That we just get closer to population. Like you said, these are inverse. So you guys are kind of shooting more for compactness and stuff. And when we play with one, we muck up the other. So that's just our preference.
Yeah.
Well, I'm having a hard time. Can anyone else hear Juan fine? I'm having a really hard time hearing him.
Can you hear me now?
One is breaking up a little bit.
Yeah. So Juan, I didn't hear your response to Morgan's observation that the smallest population variance is B4. And why would you not support if population variance deviation is your most important criteria, why would you not support B4?
Say I didn't support it. I do support it, bringing it down, but there's a criteria for me that, I mean, when you do that, we actually skew things between 3 and 5, right? So I'm just going for the closest, not total, but I mean, I do support B4, let's say, that's fine, but it just seems like these things are inverse, right? So one side wants to get more compact, and our side, I think, is going more for population, and those two things are inverse of each other. So when we play with the other, for me, it just, you know, when I'm thinking about this yesterday, it's just been a scenario where it's like, okay, well, I got these two things. What's the third thing that could come in and play and make change? That's why I brought up Vancouver. There is a bullet point at the end there just to keep communities together. So,
and that's the other thing. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if it's because you're breaking up or I'm just not following the logic, but B4 has smaller population deviations than any other plan. And I don't know that.
There's also Greg keeping the trying to keep Vancouver together, keep that eastern side of Vancouver, list a little bit some of that together in District 3. So that was the other thing. Trying to keep this together. That's all.
And
But the voters didn't vote to keep Vancouver together. That's the problem with that philosophy. That's not what they voted on.
yeah.
Well,
right, but they voted in a huge disparity, right, with District 5, that 5,000. So,
Well, it was clear from the way the county was growing that 5 was the population data they had was probably not going to be correct. But that doesn't mean when you look at the southern boundary of District 3 that you're supposed to be moving it so dramatically.
I guess I'm curious. Well, I'd like to make a comment or just a reminder on the disparity here in District 5. That again, the set of population used to create these numbers. There are two factors. One, it was created a year after the census, so the county had a year to grow, and most of that growth happened in the city of Ridgefield, and so that's a significant reason why. Or wait a minute, let me rewind that. Disregard that. I'm sorry. I had it backwards. But I guess if a second point is that if the disparity is with District 5, then I would think we'd be looking at the boundary between 5 and 2 and between the boundary in 5 and 4. That's all.
Okay.
well, I looked at it at the beginning. We had to play kind of a domino thing, right? So we had to move things around within 2, 1, 3 and 4 to make up the differential in 5.
Oh.
That's why I was saying earlier, there's things that we got to play with.
Mhm.
I mean, looking at this chart that you got up right now, so it's got a kind of a straight line on the east end of District 3, right?
Right,
I
that's
mean-
162nd, because that was the boundary between the 17th and the 18th.
Yeah, I get that. So, but, if we're looking at compactness and squareness, I mean, wouldn't it just be, okay, we're just going to move that one and kind of, angle it to the right, to make it look kind of like a parallelogram, right? Which is kind of what we're doing. But,
But see, the-
that would skew the numbers way out per population on District 4 and 3.
The problem with the precincts and the way they line up is they lined up based on the 162nd as the boundary. And so once you start going into District 4 and trying to tinker with it, it creates really squiggly lines.
Right. But we have a really squiggly line down at Battleground 2 to go around the city of that.
Mhm.
So
See,
that's
But that's what the voters voted on.
understand. Yeah. So
it is our job, Janet, to equal it out. So,
Well, but Kamal, what I hear is, multiple conflicting arguments. That you want to recognize the city of Vancouver's boundaries, and even though there's no practical way to get the city of Vancouver in only 1 or 2 council districts, and even though that's not been the precedent in the past, and frankly, not putting very much value at all on what the voters just approved. And I'm a little bit surprised because I thought I thought your interest was in getting the population numbers more equal, even though, again, I would say when we're talking about 600, a variance, estimated variation of 600 people in a population of 100,000 with the error, the noise that Paul has talked about. The 2 beginning plans, A and B, both were, in my view, very satisfactory in the equal population. So I'm just kind of at a loss to understand the logic of this. And I'm going to urge, we had 5,000 people short in District 5, but the voters approved that. And now it's our job to make an adjustment. And we're not, in my mind, I want to respect what the voters approved in doing that adjustment, not make a, what I would describe as a fairly radical change. We can respect what the voters approved and make minor changes and get the population within a very acceptable variation.
my opinions are where this should go, right?
Mm.
They voted something in that I think, had some deficiencies in it, and we have to play with it to adjust it. My adjustments, kind of go against that a little bit, but
mhm.
they voted in that scenario, and there was a 5,000 person difference. Then maybe we should just leave it at that.
We do need to make it. We do need to adjust it.
All right.
But the question is, how radical of a change you're going to make to adjust the population, and how much of it weight you put on what the voters approved. And what I see is the plans that I'm going to, plans B, or excuse me, plans A and all the variations on don't, just to use a phrase, don't respect, don't honor what the voters just approved. And the fact that it's 5,000 below target population is not really relevant to that discussion. What's relevant to the discussion is how much respect you're going to give to what the voters just approved, and then make adjustments according to that. And Paul Newman in Plan B put forward a plan that made minor adjustments to what the voters approved and got the population into what I believe is an acceptable variation. So beyond that, I'm struggling with these these arguments as to why we need to make these more extreme changes to what the voters approved.
We need to bring up our arguments too, right? It's not one-sided. We're just going to say yes to go ahead with it.
I cannot hear you.
Well, I
Juan.
agree with the target differences on B4. If that's what it's going to be, then that's what it's going to be. But it wouldn't be necessarily my preferred preference.
Right now, I'm showing B4 along with the initial.
Juan, I wonder if you could maybe call in on your phone and maybe we can hear you better. I'm having a really hard time understanding what you're saying. You can still see the screen, but maybe we can hear you better if you're on your phone.
Can you hear me now better? Maybe it's just my microphone or my network. I'm gonna try to dial in.
Right there, right there, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I moved my speaker microphone combination deal.
There we go.
Now.
There we go. Man, I've got my speaker turned up maximum volume, and as you can see, I'm leaning in to try to hear you.
All right, might just be a scenario.
Yeah, that's better.
Better?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's the microphone of this thing is direction. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't want to be combative about this. I just figured that we need to hash these out, and I'm just, it's not a good idea if we don't bring up what we would like to do.
Sure.
So everything is within, B4 looks great. If that's what it's got to be, then that's what it's got to be to respect the voters. But it's not my preferred choice.
Sure.
And that's just what I'm voicing right now for the three specific reasons.
Well, I'm hearing possibility of 4 votes for B4. Morgan, would you like to make a motion for that on that?
Sure. So I'll move to, we'll just state, we are recommending that Paul submit Plan B4 as the proposal for the public comment, or the draft proposal for the public comment.
Thank you. Is there a second for that? Janet seconds it. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion B4, raise your hand or say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
1 nay. Juan did.
Nay.
Nay, I'm sorry.
They were sticking with A2.
Juan, you voted nay.
Nay, please.
I thought you said you're okay with it.
No, that was not our preference, Greg. We were sticking with A2.
Juan, didn't I hear you say a moment ago that you were okay, you would be satisfied with B4?
Okay with it. It's not my preferred choice. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not my preferred choice either. but I'm willing to go with it. Janet?
I mean, yeah, like I said, last time you said you wanted the population equalized, which makes B4. I mean, from a cosmetic thing and what the voters voted on, the original B plan is better. So,
well, if you look at this, he's got it. Paul's got it up right now. So he's got District 3 with 191 above, and we got District 5 with 179. So that's a basic wash to 0, right? To me, that makes.
But that doesn't make sense any different than looking at B4 and saying, oh, well.
Well, B, can you pull up B4 there, Paul?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I mean, B4's got like 400 and some, I guess, in one, and the other one's got plus 78. So there's 500 above.
That's
we have
B3.
no idea where the deviations are. So when you try to say we want to equalize all the populations, you don't know that you're really equalizing the populations based on the way the census data is skewed. And so when you get down to these minor deviations, you can't say yours is better than the other because you really don't know what you're dealing with.
Understood. I get that, but that's the data we have, right? It's the numbers that come up. It's like the compactness. I mean, if I was to look at the compactness, that's pretty minute also, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Greg brought up, now we got the voter's choice, and that's a good thing to look at. And then I look at also the Vancouver city. So, um,
But why do you all think your opinion on the city of Vancouver should override what the voters say if there's a way of coming up with an equalization of the population closer to what the voters voted on?
well, I mean, voters voted on a 5,000 differential there. So
Exactly.
But they didn't know that at the time. It's not like they
understand that.
adopted a plan where they were like, we want District 5 to be have fewer people in it.
Yeah. They looked at a map with geographic areas and said, yeah, this works for us. The fact that I'm sorry, but this continued referencing back to the fact that the voters approved something that now shows a 5,000 variance is, I don't find it relevant to the discussion. What's relevant to the discussion for me is, with the information we have now, can we get the populations within a reasonable variance? And as you just said, Juan, what the voters approved should be taken into account. And I'm struggling to find arguments beyond that.
And I will say, I think I just feel like an argument for B2. We voted on B4 because we thought it was a compromise to get the lowest possible population deviance, but it does add a fair amount of like weird looking lines on the map to chart because of like cutting in on certain precincts and stuff like that in a way that B2 does not.
Yeah, and Morgan, that's why B4 is not my
You're cutting out,
preference.
Morgan.
Yeah, you are cutting out, Morgan.
What?
You're cutting out, Morgan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But Morgan's point was that B4 has a bunch of weird lines. It's a weird looking map, and that's why it's not my preference. But I was willing to vote for it to try to move this thing forward.
Right. It's not
something about I heard something about compromise in politics one time. I forget where I heard that.
So, yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me any better?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my point was just, I think Beef 2 is honestly, I think, probably the strongest map if we're looking at these factors, in terms of it is close to as compact as Alternative B is. Not quite as compact, but it's in the same ballpark, and that's quite a bit more compact than all of the other maps that we're talking about. And the population the total deviance is only 500 or 600, which again is less than 1% of the population in each district. And we're talking about the deviation for the entire county. So we're talking about less than, well under 1% of a deviation. We're not talking about something large.
Yeah,
and there's so much error here that we're probably wrong on what direction the deviation is anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the deviation of B2 is 593 estimated, to your point, Morgan, is estimated deviation. On A2, it's 487, was 106 difference. That's a gnat's eyelash in this whole thing. Not a meaningful difference, in my opinion. Talking about 500,000 people and a difference of 100, that's. But here we are attempting to get 4 votes to move something forward.
I guess my question would be, Juan, Samal, is there anything that would get you to vote for anything other than Plan A2?
Nope. That is the plan we're sticking with, is A2.
So, Kamal, part of my problem too with your opinion is you co-chaired the no charter vote. And so I wonder how much of your opinion about not keeping what the voters did is based on your opinion that we shouldn't have had the charter amendments.
That has nothing to do with this, Janet. This is about balancing out the population and trying to keep neighborhoods together. That was one of my goals. And so that with all of this. So
But neighborhoods isn't part of the redistricting plan for the charter. You can't keep the city together. So you can't use that as your basis.
Well,
Because it's in three, it's been
yes.
in three groups. It's still going to be in three groups. It's never going to be together.
I think we should also just be clear.
Bullet
It's in
point
4
that-
districts. The city is
Trying
in
to keep
District 2,
communities together.
District 1, 3, and 4. Like, we made no effort to remove Vancouver from District 2. There's no effort for that in this map.
So Paul Newman, are any of these, how many of these council districts is the city of Vancouver, how do I say that? Of the 6 different versions you have here, or of A2 and B2, let's simplify it. How many council districts take in part of the city of Vancouver?
Was that directed towards me? I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
had
it
some
was,
network-
Paul. So
I'm
A2,
having
B,
a few network problems
oh,
at the
I see
moment.
that. I see
and I'm
that.
trying to,
I mean, I think the answer is in both A2 and B2, there are 3 council districts that represent part of the people in the city of Vancouver.
At least according to the map, District 2 also includes the city of Vancouver. In the area along 205 north of the mall.
I'm not able to do anything right now. I'm having some network issues.
Yeah.
Although it's coming back, it may be coming
So-
back.
So Kamal, if that, I believe that is a true statement, that both A2 and B2, there are 3 council districts that have people who live in the city of Vancouver limits. So why, what part of your goal of having the city of Vancouver consolidated isn't achieved by both these plans?
No, I was just looking at trying to keep East Vancouver because I think Morgan, you had called it out that there were some precincts that were missing
Okay.
that were a little further east.
So now, Kamal, we're not focused on city of Vancouver. Now we're focused on East Vancouver.
No, just getting as much as Vancouver together as possible. That's all.
Yeah, and my initial point was that this plan doesn't achieve that. And I don't know if it's even possible to achieve that. So I don't know if it's a reasonable goal. Since
I don't think we're
It
talking
seems
about all
impossible.
of it, because I even said earlier that we can't get it all, but
Yeah.
make that issue smaller, I guess.
But it doesn't seem like the goal here is it seems like the goal is pretty pointed at getting that section of the city of Vancouver in some council district other than what the voters approved.
Can I?
That seems really clear.
Yeah. I mean, I would just humbly say that in order to pull in East Vancouver, you're splitting another community, the Orchards area here. It's just an observation here.
Yeah, so we're not looking at we're just focused on that one little area of East Vancouver, really, right, Kamal?
In a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Not just in a way, but yes, that's what you're focused on. And so if for you focusing on this one little area, East Vancouver is the most important criteria.
Not so much. It's also bouncing out as well, but
Yeah,
I feel
so
A2 achieves that. So
that East Vancouver and population, so that's for you. That's your criteria. But what you are not doing when you do that is putting very much value on what the voters just approved. That's a radical difference from what the voters just approved.
I mean, I might be off here, but I know we can move the map out with 3 votes, right? So you would be the 3rd vote, right? Correct.
4.
Has to be 4. Okay. I thought there was some discussion about
I did too originally, one, but I was corrected.
that. Okay, okay, no problem.
Yeah, it seems to be a problem, actually.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm not hearing anything.
Mm.
That's maybe just no one's talking.
So,
I mean, kind of waiting for a response. I mean, is it
Oh.
the voters' decision not as important as whatever it's trying to do with East Vancouver? That's really what it's coming down to. Because, you know, I'm going to say the population numbers in all these plans, I think, are well within, you know, the reasonableness. The compactness varies on these different things. So what we're left with, as I think what's been revealed here or discussed or shown, what's holding us up from making a decision is the extent to which we're willing to recognize and respect the voter's decision compared to or contrasted with this idea of something about down there in East Vancouver. And those are the 2 points of conflict.
Group. Come back to discussion at another time tomorrow.
yeah.
Well, I guess we're back to the question again that was asked last time. What can be done that will cause people to change their mind and get 4 votes on something? What can be done to do that? And you know, it was put to Juan, you, and Kamal last time. I'll put that to Morgan and Janet this time. Is there anything that can be done to plan A or A2 that could get you to vote for A or A2?
No, because when I look at how the 3rd district, when you first look at the map, looks very skewed. And then when you put on where the current counselors live, it's clearly gerrymandered, and that is not a valid basis. And from my perspective, if this thing ended up in court, the way the A district is currently done would not be upheld by a judge, because the judge is going to look at what the voters did and how close we tried to come to what the voters did. And it's not your personal preference on the city of Vancouver. You have to put aside your personal preferences and try to work for the good of, I mean, when 71% of the county voted for the current map, and that has to include an awful lot of Republicans because there's not that many Democrats in Clark County. You've got to respect their wishes. So no, I'm never going to go for A. I'd rather it go to court.
So I think my answer is not that extreme. I think, one, all of these plans are within a standard of reasonable. I don't think that any of them are something that we are going to be, you know, super unhappy with, I guess, once people start voting in these districts. But I do think that there is a reasonable concern that the Orchards area isn't being it's being cut up a lot. I think, you know, that area of just north of the city of Vancouver, it doesn't make a lot of sense the way the A maps look. Like, it's clearly just kind of being tweaked and messed with in order to balance out the population in other parts of the county. And so I don't know. It's like, I think I would want to see a map that takes that area more seriously I don't know if that means, trying to create a straight line or something close to a straight line across the top that's a few, few communities down from where it is right now. And then we have to borrow population from, Hawkinson or something like that for District 4. Like, I would like to go with District Beef 2. Like, that's my first choice. But I think, it's like if we can come up with something that doesn't look like it's, treating that part of the county as just a trading ground, and it looks pretty close to what the voters approved, I mean, we can have a discussion. But I think right now the problem is that the population is balanced, and it's like I'm not seeing any movement on Juan or Samal's part to be compromising. I'm seeing them come with a plan and holding the rest of us hostage.
Hmm.
I mean, you're not even making real arguments, Small.
Don't need to. So like that, we've come to the conclusion that what we've put together, it's pretty much balanced. It's like that for A2 and A2. I thought that A was actually the best one to go with. But I said, we want to give a little bit, and we did. So we moved the precinct from 5 to 3. So,
So the population balancing doesn't really matter to you because A was not any more balanced than the original B plan. So I just think that it's hard to have this conversation because you've been massively disingenuous since your map came out. You're telling us that, the population's the most important thing, but it's clearly not. And so I don't think that it's hard to trust you to vote for a plan that you've written when you aren't being honest with us about why you want the map that you want.
Not true.
It is.
Sure.
When you go back and look at alternative A, I'm thinking about Janet's observation about sitting in front of a judge. And you look at that district 3, and the south end is moved over to the east, and the north end is moved over to the west. And to be able to kind of provide the logic of why that's being moved, whereas nothing else gets moved like that. No radical changes to the voter approved plan except that one spot, really. And yeah,
I guess my logic when I looked at that change was to bring the plus 600 and minus 600 more into line with being closer to a net zero.
Yeah, I wish we could all kind of agree that the population variances on all these plans,
right?
On all these plans, the population variances are well within the kind of reasonableness. So
I agree. So it's compactness, right? So
yeah.
Either way, I mean.
Yeah. So then it gets us to this one kind of question of why is that one little spot moved around like that so radically? Why is that? It's not about population. It's not about population.
And it's not about the city of Vancouver.
It's not about the city of Vancouver.
No, I mean we're catching most of the city of Vancouver, right? So.
But you're cutting out a section of the city of Vancouver too.
Yeah.
That's already all cut up.
Right. It's already cut up, so therefore city of
It
Vancouver
wasn't cut up in Plan B.
Yeah. Yeah.
They said, I think we're at an impasse. That's my take.
Yep.
Go out and regroup and we discuss it. Kamal and I can discuss.
Yeah.
Forward and go from there and
all right.
back at it.
All right. So
I was just going to pose this one to Morgan before we break. I remember you mentioned, I think it was not the last meeting, but the one before that, where you said that more of the precincts, there was some that were left off. Would that get you to go with Plan A if we were able to get more of those precincts that you said were missing. There was like 3 of them, I believe you said.
So here's the thing. Again, I came into yesterday's meeting probably willing to see where everybody was at and vote for any of the plans.
Mhm.
I didn't really have a problem with any of them. I think they all do a pretty good job, as we talked about, with population. I think they do a pretty good job with compactness. The only thing that your plan doesn't do is it doesn't follow the will of the voters. But I think if we had a good reason for it, like it's not so drastically off.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's like I have a hard time trusting you now because like you haven't been really willing to compromise at all.
Mhm.
And like your compromise was moving 1 precinct.
Mhm.
And you haven't talked about other things that you might be willing to do to your plan.
Mhm.
Like you're now talking about like adding some precincts down in the, it's like
I
just
was
where I live.
going off your words.
But that's partially just like, I mean, if you want to try to include all of the city of Vancouver in District 3,
Mhm.
I mean, all of the east part of Vancouver in District 3, and come up with a plan that does that, like,
Mhm.
give it a try, see if you can get more votes. I
Okay.
mean, again,
I mean, I
I'm
proposed
not
that,
going to say no.
I proposed that on Monday, right? Taking that northeast part and moving it over and see how the numbers are skewed. Since population's well within, as everyone's saying, well within that 1%, that still keep us within that 1%. And, make it more compact and just move in that line.
Mhm.
Make it go straight just a little bit east of what Plan B does.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's like if you come up with an alternative.
Okay.
All right, well,
I think the challenge for Small, you and Juan is to try to win over Greg or Janet to a vote.
Okay.
Like,
Understood?
Okay. Cool.
all right, well, I'm not sure. Amanda, can we have a meeting? Are people available to meet? So someone suggested a meeting tomorrow morning. I think that was you. Was that you, Juan?
Yeah.
Amanda, can we do a special meeting with 22 hours of notice?
No, it has to be 24 hours notice.
Thursday
Are
works
people
for me.
available at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning?
I've got a meeting.
Almost positive I am.
Morgan, you said you're not available?
I'm not available between 10 and 2 tomorrow.
We can't
Available
just
all day.
next Monday.
What did you say, Small?
We can't just shoot for next Monday.
Well, I was going off of one suggestion of a meeting tomorrow, but you prefer to meet next Monday instead of?
What about Friday? That would give us 24 hours notice.
Yeah.
8:30.
Friday works for me.
Sure.
Friday works for me.
Same time. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Make it Friday.
Morgan, does that work for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
8:30 or 9:30?
8:30.
8:30. All right, well, what am I missing on the agenda?
Mhm.
Schedule future meetings. We'll meet this Friday, the 3rd at 8:30. And then anything else for the good of the order? So I'm not seeing any. We will see you all this Friday morning at 8:30. So
Good.
to be
All right.
continued.
All right. Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Later,
you.
everybody.
Everyone.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.